but you just wander around the agroforestry and with the chickens, and you see that nature keeps carrying on, and it's a nice lesson to just take a step back from everything that's happening, and it's humbling and grounding at the same time.
This is The Producers. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Having grown up on a farm, Tom Bjorksten witnessed the challenges of working the land and set his sights on a career in Sydney. But after studying and landing a government job, he had a yearning to be back on the land. Together with his wife Nicole, they headed to northern New South Wales, where they now run a Syntropic agroforestry farm.
So we're farming in the northern rivers of New South Wales. This area is most well known for the town of Byron Bay and its associated counterculture. So the area used to be the world's largest subtropical rainforest. So that kind of gives you an idea of how fertile it is, and it's a kind of place where you stick something in the ground and it'll grow. So this means we're kind of lucky enough, or depending on which way you look at it, maybe unlucky enough to have a year-round growing season. What I think about this area is it kind of feels like the future of Western societies, in terms of over the last century we saw the decline of rural areas, everyone moving to the city. But now here we're seeing a huge influx of people from the city, and particularly young people, which is leading to a revival of villages and farming and just the community in general. So, I was going to say, and yeah, what's so great about what kind of comes from all of that is the real foodie culture that we have. You can have any day of the week here. You can go to a farmer's market, you can source your produce from local farmers, and not only are people really keen on the quality of the food, but where it comes from, how it's farmed, is it ethical, and all that kind of stuff.
After becoming disillusioned with life in the city, Tom knew there had to be a better way to live.
Directly before my wife, or my now wife, and I, Nicole, were living in Sydney, I actually grew up on a fairly large cattle farm, but then I kind of seeing the struggle of my parents, not exactly the struggle, but the really, really hard slog to make a living. I decided to move to the city. So there I studied, first of all, studied finance and marketing before getting a Master of Economics. Not too long after finishing the Master of Economics and starting working for the government, I just really realised that an office job wasn't for me, that I didn't want to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, and I just found myself quite unstimulated and really yearning for the life, back on the farm, really. And although I still knew that I didn't want to farm exactly the way that my family had always farmed, so that led not for us to pack up the city and decide that we were going to start a farm, but just to leave the city. And then the way it turned out was that we fell into permaculture, took a few courses, and then the rest was history from there. We left the city. It was a permaculture a flyer that Nicole stumbled upon, actually, that a little backyard a short course in permaculture. And yeah, from that, we both went on to study a permaculture design certificate. So what that kick-started in me was I had, a background in farming and a love of it, but this taught me that we could actually farm in a way that's in harmony with nature, where you're harnessing ecological processes and you're not fighting against nature all the time. And then that was what, for me, ignited the spark, and thought, okay, yeah, look, let's do this. And so then we started the search, and about maybe 6 months later, so that was in April 2019, we found the place and moved here.
Misty Creek is a young syntropic agroforestry farm where plants are positioned together in time and space to build a community that flourishes.
So Syntropic Agroforestry is harnessing the processes of natural succession to grow plants without basically a minimum of inputs. So I guess to use a bit of a metaphor, it's the way that, say in our area, that it used to be a subtropical rainforest. If you just let an area go, it will eventually become a rainforest. You start to get your woody weeds growing, trees will pop up, and then if you let it go a few hundred years, you would start to get your rainforest trees. But we can use our unique skills as humans to manage this process to become a lot faster, and then in this way we don't need fertilizers, we don't need irrigation, we don't need chemicals, any of that kind of stuff, because if you think about a rainforest, it doesn't need anything external to produce, it just does. So it's kind of about learning your local biome and how succession functions there, and then imitating that in a way that we can use as humans. So whether it's growing food for humans, for animals, shade, shelter, all of that kind of stuff.
Creating a natural environment is allowing Tom to farm meat chickens and explore heritage breeds too.
Our main products at the moment that we sell week to week is chickens for meat and eggs. So we farm both conventional fast-growing chickens, and we're also starting to explore breeding our own heritage chickens, which we've just started bringing to the market in the last few weeks. And the other thing, and then we also have the agroforestry as well. We're using the movement of these chickens and the way that they fertilise, and because we're moving them regularly, they're fertilising in place, and then we grow crops after that. So our kind of main cash crop at the moment is ginger, and then throughout our agroforestry too, we have a wide range of fruit, nut and timber trees that will kind of continue to grow and provide a yield in the future, and also start to create a really nice environment for those chickens to live in.
A unique set of circumstances revealed a hole in the market for locally, ethically produced chickens, and Tom jumped feet first into chicken farming. Well,
first of all, we started with the chickens. That started with a friend of ours during COVID. He had some spare time, so he mentored us into how to do the pasture-raised chickens. It was a method he was calling like the open pasture-raised system, or maybe like a day-range model, as some other people call it. And because of a really tricky abattoir situation up here at the time, no one else was really doing chickens, because you had to, basically the situation was, if you wanted to sell chickens, you had to do the slaughtering yourself. There was no place where you could drop the chickens and then they would just give them back to you ready to sell. So that meant there was a little bit of a gap in the market. People, especially people in this area, they really want locally produced, ethically farmed, high welfare meat, and people love eating chickens. So there was an opening there for us, and we started selling at the Mullumbimby farmers markets, and so now we're selling there each week, and at the Bangalore farmers markets as well. In our early days, before we have the nice chicken caravans that we have now that keep them really sheltered from the rain and sun and all of that, was an unexpected thunderstorm one night that meant my wife and I sat bolt upright in bed and we're like, oh my God, the chickens. And we ran out, and it was the kind of rain where, you know, you're wearing your full rain gear and you're wet to the underpants by the time you step out the front door. And then so we had to individually carry 150 chickens inside their chicken caravan, because as they can tend to, once they get a habit of sleeping outside, they kind of tend to keep that habit. So we had to move them in one by one. And then on top of that, we had a pipe burst in the shed of one of the drainage pipes on the roof. So, you know, it was just one of those things where it all happened. And then we were up most of the night and went to sleep, and we woke up in the morning and it's like, did that actually happen last night?
Having never farmed chickens, Tom soon realised there are many challenges involved.
In Australia, if you want to grow chickens, it's simply, unfortunately, not possible to source a day-old heritage chicken. If you were in the United States or Europe, you'd be able to do this. So what this means that I've kind of been searching high and low, you know, looking at poultry Facebook groups and things like this, and managed to find a couple of different strains of chickens from backyard breeders across the country, and started to breed and hatch our own here on the farm. So it's been a very interesting project. Very typical to my style. I actually knew nothing about breeding chickens and kind of been learning how I'm going, which is, it's been, you know, a lot of trial and error, a lot of tears and frustration and sweat and tears. But after we're now, so we first got our birds about this time last year. So we breeded them, hatching them, and the real difference is that these birds, we process them between about kind of 22 to 30 weeks of age, so, you know, 4 to 6 months, whereas the typical chicken you eat in a supermarket, especially one that's kind of had growth hormones and antibiotics and stuff, you could be eating that. It could be 5 weeks old or 6 or maybe 7. The conventional chickens that we farm, we grow them a little bit slower for a number of reasons, but they're 8 or 9 weeks. So you're looking at this chicken that takes 2 to 3 times as long as normal. And what that means is that all that extra time out in the open foraging, it just develops an incredible flavour. Like, it's just the best way to describe it. It's so chickeny, and it's full of, you know, nice fatty acids, your amino acids, all that kind of stuff, and it's just a really rich eating experience. So it feels really good, but what we're trying to figure out is how to actually make a business from it, because that extra growing time obviously means that for us it's going to cost a lot more to produce. And can we find enough people that are willing to pay an appropriate price to make this worthwhile as a business enterprise?
The exploration into farming a heritage-bred chicken has opened a whole new chicken eating perspective and the potential to farm something quite special.
The first time I ate one of these cockerels, I hadn't offered them for sale. Like I said before, 6 months of just, you know, wondering what was going on, and it's so, you know, inefficient, all this kind of stuff that made it so challenging. And then I didn't know whether the chicken we were going to end up with the end was, you know, how's it going to turn out? Was it going to be tasty? Was it going to be tough and inedible? Like, you know, what was going to happen? And I had my father-in-law, sister-in-law, so that my wife's family was here, and we roasted this chicken, and it was just so good. It was the best chicken I've ever had by so far, and they were basically telling me to shut up. They're like, Tom, stop going on about this chicken. So, that experience of, it's that of doing a project that's completely unknown of the outcomes, and then finally later getting that outcome, I was so happy. And then since that time, getting the same kind of feedback from chefs and our market customers has made me feel really good about that project, and inspired to keep rolling with it.
Misty Creek has given Tom a sense of purpose, but also a path to explore new opportunities too.
It's given me purpose, like I said earlier, purpose and stimulation. I see it. It's each day. It's like a complete puzzle, especially the integrated method of farming that we're following, where we're cropping and growing animals and agroforestry all together. It means that it has many different moving parts, and you're trying to always, do what's best for the chickens, but also do what's best for your cropping, and also do what's best for your agroforestry. So it means there's, lots of different moving parts. And then we're also thinking about, because we're not just producing, we're also selling, logistics, food safety, all that kind of stuff. So I love that challenge, that stimulation of figuring out that puzzle. And then the kind of the purpose behind that stimulation in terms of providing high quality, nutrient dense food that people are so appreciative of. That's the kind of, the reason why that puzzle becomes worthwhile to me. What's next for us is we're 3 years into the farm now, and it kind of feels like we've been expanding like crazy for ages to get to a point where firstly we can produce enough that we can make a decent standard of living, but also have a life as well. So, as many farmers will attest to, when you start, you can't afford to hire labour, and then you're just working yourself, and you can never get a break, and it's so hard. And, so then we took the step where we hired a full-time staff member, and then, of course, that meant that we were making zero money because all of the money we were making was going to the staff member. But then that enabled us to produce more because we had more people in the team. And yeah, so now we're at a point where we've got our infrastructure, we've got a really awesome team in place with a full-time and a few part-time people. So we're now looking to get to this point for the next little while to, really nail down our systems so we can make sure we're still giving people the highest quality produce, but we're starting to find that balance in life again, and basically enjoy life, enjoy the fruits of our labour, the food that we produce, and while still moving the farm forward. I love the freedom of it, just being outside, and the way that it just keeps carrying on. So, I'm sure everyone's aware of the floods we've been suffering recently, and the extreme weather. Before the floods this year, it was drought, and then it was fire. But you just wander around the agroforestry and with the chickens and with the cattle when we had them, and you see that they keep carrying on, that nature keeps carrying on, and it's a nice lesson to take a step back from everything that's happening, and it's humbling and grounding at the same time.
Tom and his wife Nicole turned their lives on their head to find a greater connection with the land and the food they eat, and in turn they're giving people of the region an ethical, nutritious and delicious option too. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production, I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of producers, farmers, makers, and growers, the true lifeblood of the food industry. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or email us at producerspodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au.